Well, my name's Scott Dodson. I've had a string of roles, starting with a chief product officer role, but then moving quickly into chief growth officer or chief marketing officer. In those roles, I've helped my companies have exits of 25 million, 85 million, and 700 million. Including the last one was the Play Magnus Group, which was a 250-person public company out of Norway, to chess.com. I'm currently a fractional CMO or CGO for 3 companies: a language learning startup out of Thailand, or not startup, actually, they've got 60 people, a simulation and VR company out of Norway that does work for like NASA and the European Space Agency and Saudi Aramco, and then a fintech out of Boulder, Colorado, called Savly. When it comes to effective marketing strategies, there is no one-size-fits-all or magic bullet approach. That's the first thing. The second thing is communication is so important, and I think people sometimes fail to use their own skills as marketers internally in the companies that they work for. Marketing can't survive in a vacuum. It has to be collaborative. It has to work with finance, sales, product. And you need to, I think, tailor your communications. You need to basically first seek to listen and understand exactly like what are the growth drivers for the company, and then tailor your own communications to the audience, just like you would an external audience, whether that's your CEO, whether that's stakeholders across the company. A concrete example would be one of the portfolio companies of the Play Magnus Group was a company called Chessable. It's essentially masterclass for chess. If you're familiar with masterclass, it's basically, experts leading their world-renowned leading courses that people use. So it's kind of an edtech. The difference was the business model was a pay-as-you-go. It wasn't a subscription model. It was a per-course model. Or if people are familiar with the platform of Steam, it's like that. You pay for every game you buy, like more e-commerce than subscription. And the core, growth loop there was that we would get these chess grandmasters and famous chess players to make great courses, and the product did their end of it by paying these people a lot more than they would normally get publishing. So essentially there was a built-in kind of incentive to market because they would actually get something out of this. So essentially the product would build courses that had a built-in influencer campaign because these people would do that. And then what we found is that, by bringing people to the course, so they would bring their followers because they would talk about their course that they just built that they were very proud of. And then those users we could monetize very, very well through great CRM on the platform, such that we had lifetime values of like $1,000 per paying customer on Chessable, which is just amazing. People say, people spending $1,000 on chess, and the marketing team also, if the grandmaster or whatnot didn't have a social media presence, we actually would build one out for them. We would set up their YouTube channel and essentially help manage that because we realized that they could actually grow that and we could grow together as a brand. First one is we have a tendency to try and do what we know works, right? And apply what we know to any new situation, even if it's not necessarily, the best thing. Like when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And I think it's very important to resist this and to feel confident or find a way that you can learn what you need to, or you can leverage your network, or you can build a network where you can get that information, or you can bring on board somebody or find somebody in the organization who knows that. And you don't have to know everything. You just need to make the right decisions that's best for the company. The second thing is to be careful not to underinvest in brand. I started out in the early days, there really only was brand marketing because you really couldn't measure this stuff. I mean, I'm that old, and you would do print and outdoor and and all this kind of stuff, and TV, radio. And then I think digital marketing has allowed for a lot of measurement, and that's fantastic. But it's led to a situation where many marketers would rather actually, if you give them the choice between worse performance with 100% certainty and 100% clarity on the attribution, and better performance without that certainty, without being able to draw a direct line to their marketing efforts and the business results. They would choose the former, and really their business orgs sometimes are kind of forcing that, or they feel forced into that by their business orgs. And this is it's a fundamentally mistake, because obviously, again, you want to do what's going to have the most impact for the business. So, an example of this, I think, is I had a kind of a very concrete example of this, where I came into Hero Gaming as a CMO, and I was actually replacing a CMO who stayed in the business and was actually moved to the head of marketing Sweden. And it took a little while to build that relationship and to build that trust on both sides. But I realized that this guy was an expert in something that I wasn't, which was media and brand. And we were in a space that's, iGaming, which is very competitive, and there's not a tremendous amount of differentiation in general around the product. So it made a lot of sense to me to invest in brand marketing here, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So, but I trusted him, and we developed a strategy together where we spent about €1 million a month, a little more maybe, and the majority of that was brand investment. And as somebody who really understood performance marketing, and not brand, this was very uncomfortable, because it was very hard to measure the impacts of TV and radio, which is where the majority of our spend was going. And but I could measure the impacts of what our CPAs were, what our conversion rates were, and things like that for the segment that was performance based. And it was fascinating because it took a little while, as we knew it would, but it was still very scary. And 2 months in, the numbers aren't moving. But then by the third month, we started to see some pretty significant improvements on CPA and conversion rates, and that just got better over time. And so, 9 months in, we had taken significant market share from our competitors that had a very much more performance only focus. And then we were able to sell that business for a very nice multiple, and return a bunch of money to the dividends to the investors.